Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Blair Embry. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Prison Yoga Project, and we are so excited today. We have our entire executive staff here, our executive leadership, to celebrate Prison Yoga Project and talk to you about everything that we've done in 2022 and all of the things that we want to cultivate and build for 2023. So thank you so much for being here, whether you're here live or listening to this at a later date. I'm going to do some formal introductions, and then James Fox, our founder, will lead us in a centering opportunity. And we'll start with James as well. James Fox, MA, C-IAYT, is the founder of Prison Yoga Project. He is a certified yoga instructor who has dedicated himself to developing a trauma-informed approach to teaching yoga in correctional facilities that has resulted in the establishment of yoga programs in prisons throughout the US, Mexico, Europe, and Australia, and beyond. A practitioner of yoga and mindfulness meditation for more than 30 years, upon receiving his teaching credentials in 2000, James began his mission of sharing the benefits of yoga with incarcerated people. We also celebrated 20 years of James going into San Quentin this year. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but absolutely congratulations, James. And thanks for being with us here today.
Yeah.
Bill Brown, C-I-AYT. He's a certified yoga therapist. That's what those initials are. Is the executive director of Prison Yoga Project, a nonprofit organization that supports incarcerated people worldwide with trauma-informed yoga and mindfulness programs. Through his work with PYP, he hopes to promote social change, transforming our systems and culture to create a more inclusive, equitable, and just world. Bill began working with PYP in 2013 and has served in federal, state, and county facilities. In 2016, he began offering trainings with PYP in a trauma-informed yoga for incarcerated people and assumed the executive director role in 2018. He's the contributing editor to Yoga Service Council Omega Institute's book, Best Practices for Yoga in the Criminal Justice System. Welcome, Bill. Thanks for being here. And Nicole Healthaller, MPS RYT 200, is the assistant director of Prison Yoga Project. Nicole graduated from University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service and is a certified yoga teacher. Previously, Nicole worked as a high school educator through Teach for America, where she studied and implemented trauma-informed responses to misbehavior to help her students achieve their goals. She also studied and worked in Cape Town, South Africa, supporting yoga instructors working with children with autism. And in Vietnam, she taught teachers how to use trauma-informed techniques to improve classroom management. Nicole has a passion for social justice, prison reform, and yoga, all rooted in her desire for restorative and transformative justice as an alternative to punitive punishment and its harmful effects. She has witnessed this while working in the classroom as well. She facilitates yoga at a local jail in Little Rock for incarcerated youth and men and women now, and is building prison yoga programs all throughout Arkansas. Thank you so much for being here, Nicole. Welcome. I love when it's a mouthful when we talk about our leadership, really. And I know that you all have done even more than that. And those are just the condensed bios.
I appreciate that update that you added as you went when we're like, oh, we should probably update that.
Change that.
And it's always nice to start with the laughs in the warm room as well. And James, will you lead us in a centering opportunity?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, everyone. I'm here in Bolinas, California, the original land of the coastal Miwoks, which is at the foot of Mount Tamalpais, and it's also on the Pacific coast. So, if it feels right to you and you want to join us in a short centering practice, I'd like to first ask you if you can really dedicate yourself for the next maybe 5 to 7 minutes of engaging in this practice, of really dropping inside yourself and seeing if you can let go of the mind chatter and the constant distractions of the mind. So to get started, if you want to move, if you want to take a few stretches, if you're seated and you want to move, you can move whatever way you wish. And prepare yourself to sit still for a few minutes. And see if you can let yourself settle into stillness. And as you do that, you might just notice that your senses are open. Sense of sound, hearing my voice or any other sounds around you. Any light or shadow across your eyes. If your eyes are closed, any shadow or light across the eyes. Any sense of smell. Any taste that you might be experiencing in this moment. And your sense of feeling. Feeling this body that you live in. Perhaps starting with the felt sense of your feet. The feeling of your legs, your lower legs, your upper legs. The feeling of your arms, your shoulders, your hands, the feeling of your hands wherever they're resting. The feeling of your head, if it feels right for you to move your head around a little bit to get in touch with the feeling of the weight of the head. And the feeling of your torso. And the feeling of your breath. The feeling of sensations in your body as you inhale. And sensations in your body as you exhale. No reason to control the breath, but just feeling the natural movement of breathing in your body as you inhale and you exhale. Noticing if thoughts interrupt your focus on feeling the movement of breathing in your body as we take a few more breaths. Noticing that momentary pause after you've taken your inhale and that momentary pause after you've taken your exhale. And so for these last few breaths, I invite you now to slowly take a full inhale. Take your time, taking a full inhale and feeling the expansion of the lungs and the parts of your body as you do that. And then following that full inhale with a long, slow exhale so that you're exhaling completely before you take your next full inhale. We'll do that 3 more times, so 3 more breath cycles. And at the end of your next exhale, after you've exhaled completely, just letting go. Taking a couple of more breaths, feeling your body breathing itself. And then when you're ready, if your eyes have been closed, you can let your eyes open. And let's come fully conscious into the present moment with one another.
Thank you so much, James, for that really potent centering. And I really loved how you started it with the dedication, being dedicated to being here. And, not to make it too cheesy, but I do really think that everyone on this call is here because they are dedicated to this work. They're dedicated because they serve Prison Yoga Project in some way or capacity, or they're dedicated to the work that we do, which I think is the perfect starting off point, to just again say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up week after week in all of the different ways that you support the work that we do for the benefit of our incarcerated folks and their families and the people that serve in the system. So calling them into this webinar today and their presence. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, Blair, that we meet you as colleagues.
Yeah.
We meet you as colleagues. We happen to be the staff, but you're another me in essence. And so we meet you and we welcome you as colleagues.
And Bill, maybe for anyone, maybe there are new people to Prison Yoga Project on this call as well, or listening to the recording. Will you talk to us about Prison Yoga Project? And I know that we have an expanded mission statement as well. So will you walk us through that?
Sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. I mean, I know that there are definitely some names I see on the list that are unfamiliar, but welcome everybody, because the bulk of the people here I know. And if I owe you an email, just please be patient. I'll get back to you. So this year, a major development, I think, for us, another evolution, another turn of the spiral. We are introducing a new mission statement. And I'll just read that. And it's expanded. It's opened up. Our mission statement up until this point has been, we support incarcerated people to help bring about these outcomes, and all of that's still a part of who we are. But we realized what we would like to see in the world is so much more than that. And so we've updated our mission statement, and it reads, Prison Yoga Project seeks to bring about a cultural shift in how we address crime, addiction, and mental illness through healing-centered approaches that include yoga and embodied mindfulness. Actually, what's written on the paper is not actually, let me just say that again. Prison Yoga Project seeks to bring about a cultural shift towards healing-centered approaches for addressing crime, addiction, and mental illness through yoga and embodied mindfulness. And as we were in the centering this morning, I had a memory. I remembered the thing that sort of started us down this road, Blair, and you had a part in that towards the end of 2020 or 2021, the years blend together. You wanted to have us attend a conference for the American Jail Association or something like that.
Yeah.
And and I thought, oh, well, they're gonna laugh at us because we're not the usual people that show up as vendors at a conference like this. But when you reached out, they were more than enthusiastic about Prison Yoga Project being there. And it was that they were starting to put a focus on officer wellness. And they were really excited. We didn't get a chance to do that, but that put us on this path of looking at we've always known how much harm that the people working inside the system experience, as well as, the people who are incarcerated there. And the more we looked at what would it mean to be developing programming to support correctional officers and the other staff working in the system, the more we realized, look, it's not enough just to seek to be there to bring about these outcomes for a specific group of people. We want the system itself to change, because we know that the philosophical orientation towards punishment, which is deeply rooted in our society, and we see, I think, most explicitly expressed in our justice system, that punitive approach causes more harm than it prevents. It's actively harming everybody who's participating in it. And we're all part of this society. It's actively harming all of us. Even folks that are only tangentially experiencing it, and over James's 20 years and my nearly 10 years now, it's just the, recognition that we need to be bringing a healing-centered approach for everybody involved. And we need the system to shift towards a healing-centered approach to addressing these social problems. And hopefully, if we can get this part of our society that is where it's most explicitly expressed to start to shift in that direction, we get our whole society to start to shift in that direction. So this is it. This is the expansion. And this is, I think, always been a part of who we are as an organization, that it's more than just a particular outcome for a particular group or for particular people, that it is about changing the world, really. And we're working in one particular part of that space.
Thank you, Bill.
And it's exciting. It's really exciting because it opens us up to doing so much more as an organization in a loving way for everybody that we're meeting.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, Bill, that from a traditional yoga perspective of non-duality, if we are true to practitioners of traditional yoga and classical yoga, that we enter the system with a non-dual approach, so that we understand that everyone in the system suffers from the inhumanity and the makeup of the system. And I know for myself, then, it causes me to do a fair amount of work on myself. to embrace and to meet everybody equally, be them staff that are vested in the system itself and those who are incarcerated. So
I'd also like to add, I did drop it as a link to it in the chat. Blair, you just had our lovely expanded paragraph about our mission that Bill was originally reading, which is also really good. So it's updated on the website. Thank you, Bill and Priscilla, for that. It also allows us to expand who we are serving outside of correctional staff, but including folks that are maybe in halfway homes or pre-incarceration or post-incarceration students. So we've been able this year to partner with a lot of really amazing organizations who maybe aren't working directly with currently incarcerated folks, but they're working in the same systems, and our populations cross over quite frequently. And so it's really been exciting to partner with folks in all different ways, and to hear, as y'all know, or maybe you don't know, I work a lot with folks that are starting new programs, and they'll come in, they'll say, you know, there's this like center near my home. It's not necessarily a prison or a jail, but it's the same population of folks that deserve this care. And so we're able to work with them to start new programs. And so this has really expanded our reach as well, and wanted to share that. And someone like me who loves education, like, it's exciting to see the ways we're potentially going to be in schools, in areas where there's often a very obvious school to prison pipeline, and factors like that as well. So I wanted to add that in as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. It really, the potential for where we can offer trauma-informed yoga is endless. And so, that's our approach to healing trauma, is through trauma-informed yoga. And we see that our punitive justice system causes more harm to a population that is already traumatized. James, will you talk a little bit about punitive justice? And then Nicole, I would love for you to tag on and kind of talk about trauma and incarceration after that.
Yeah. Well, punitive justice is also often known as retributive justice. You do the crime, you pay the time. You do the crime, you do the time. And for all of us who have worked in this environment, we completely understand what this means. We have been exposed to the punitive reality of our justice system, and the fact that there is this in the United States, but not only in the United States, because, I recognize, Josephine is on this call from Sweden, and Sweden and Norway are often held up as, the ideal prison systems. But in many respects, it's still a punitive justice system. And people are bought into punishment as justice. And there is so in that kind of schematic, there is so little opportunity for healing. So when we step forward and say what we bring to the punitive justice system is a healing approach that really, really conforms with the other mandate of our prison system, which is rehabilitation. The problem is that 95% of the emphasis is on punishment, and maybe, if you're lucky, 5% of the focus is on rehabilitation. I mean, we know in California, which has, is it $11 billion annual budget of the state prison system now? $11 billion? That less than 1% of the budget is spent on rehabilitation. And that one of the reasons why we get grants is because the money comes from the state legislature, not from the Department of Corrections. The state legislature has initiated these innovative programming grants to be passed on to organizations like us that have proven that we have an effective approach in working in this environment. So the entire criminal justice system in terms of its punitive nature results in a recidivism rate in this country, which is close to 70% post 5 years, if I'm correct with my facts. So I think it's 65% post 3 years. It's 70% post 5 years. So it's a broken system, and it's been broken for decades. I don't know if there's much more to say than that, but we are among a number of organizations that are working to bring healing-centered approaches to this system.
I think I want to just add in there, it's like when we look at that recidivism rate, and it's just so clear, that this is a broken system and this is not the outcome. And then you peel back so many different things that we could point to. The rate at which people pass away, the rate at which people die after having been released from prison or jail is shocking when you see it. It's shocking to know that people working as officers within the system have reduced lifespan of as much as 18 years by some studies. 12 is a very reliable number. The rates of, abuse that happens in their families. I mean, it just looks at you every way that you look at this, that toxic environment, an anti-healing environment, a harming environment just produces shocking outcome after shocking outcome. And it becomes so clear that obviously something needs to change. And, you mentioned the state legislature starting to create, it's the legislature that's starting to fund these things. And this is, I think, a signal that we're starting to see around the US and around the world, really, where we are seeing more funded programs. And this is a signal to us that the system is shifting. And the more we can get that system to shift, and the more we can get that system to invest in healing-centered approaches, this is a signal to us that what we're doing is working in terms of creating a systemic shift. And I know that there's one program that we just launched or are launching with a woman on the East Coast who is working with survivors of sex trafficking. And these are women who would have gone to jail. And instead, they are in a treatment-heavy program that is not incarceration. I mean, they're there by order, but they are there by order not to be punished, but to receive treatment for the trauma that they've suffered. And fortunately, now we're going to have yoga and mindfulness as a part of that as well. And that's recent. Yeah.
And thank you all for this. And I think, to even rewind it back a little bit further, or maybe someone who is listening to this that's not familiar with Prison Yoga Project and why we serve incarcerated people, sometimes we say hurt people. And so part of our mission and through our foundational training, we really offer a shift in perspective in seeing that incarcerated populations have high trauma rates. They have very high ACE scores, which are adverse childhood experiences. So these are people who have been harmed by systems, by racist systems, by poverty that cause more harm. So that's the first thing, is that when we look at the population of incarcerated people and their families, we see a traumatized population. And so our healing salve is trauma-informed yoga and mindfulness as to support and heal this trauma. So Nicole, will you talk about that a little bit more about, the intersection of trauma and incarceration?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I could start with just what makes sense intuitively. When I was a classroom teacher, a lot of my students were hungry, right? And so if you yell at someone that's hungry, when I'm hungry and someone yells at me, I will surely be hangry and yell back, right? It doesn't work, right? So punishing somebody for acting out because they're suffering has never worked. And so you can just understand that in your basic relationships from day to day. And then when you start to get to know the folks that we serve inside, they didn't just miraculously end up in jail. And in my case, I work with folks in jail. And 99% of the folks that I work with are in recovery from substance use. And you begin to hear their stories and you begin to understand they're there for opioid addiction. They're there because they had a family member that was murdered in front of them. They're there because they got out and then they had no job opportunities because they were incarcerated. And the easiest and best way that they can feed their families is to go back to selling drugs. And so you understand how deeply trauma is intertwined with just the system of punishment, right? And so that all comes together. What yoga allows for us to do, and at the start of every class, I say, I'm not here to punish you. And they all just kind of, right, just like let their bodies relax a little bit. And I talk about, in my particular program in Little Rock, it's called the CSI Academy. They're in a bunch of different classes where they talk about trauma, and they understand that they have experienced trauma. Many of them have been diagnosed with PTSD. But what our program provides is what I like to call the missing piece or the gap, where they begin to understand how that shows up in their body. And so even down to when we do a cobra pose, which I think most people on this call are familiar with cobra, but maybe not, is when you press up and you open like your heart space, your chest. They say it feels so good. And I say, well, how many of you walk around jail like this in like a protective stance? And everyone's like, well, yeah, duh, right? Because it's jail. Absolutely. And so just beginning to slowly understand the way that trauma has impacted their body, and then slowly begin to understand that they can regulate what's happening in their body, that they don't have to be owned by their trauma, that they don't always have to live in fight or flight mode, that they have some choice. I say some because the system does not provide a lot of opportunity for choice. But simply the act of choosing how long they hold a chair pose or feeling their legs on fire in chair pose just allows them begin to develop a relationship with their body that may have been taken away from trauma over and over again. We talk a lot too, specifically in my group of folks that are recovering from substance use, about this itch, this scratch to want to use, and how that can go away over time. And so can you sit with discomfort? Can you sit in this challenging yoga pose and do it with love and compassion and not punishment? And prove to yourself that you can be in your body and you can tolerate hard things and you can overcome them. And so while in addition to all the amazing factors of stress reduction, better sleep, pain management, they're learning to be in their body again. And through that self-compassion, through that self-regulation, and then better choices. And so we're often learning about the body as we move through it. The whole time. And I know I spoke specifically to this one group, but that translates to all the groups that we work with. Yeah.
Yeah, that's everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much for also tying in addiction.
Yeah. And I wanted to say that's why I love our new mission so much, because we actually don't even name prison in the mission. Like, I want one day for the word prison not to be scary, because I don't believe that works, right? A scary prison system. But I like this idea that we understand that healing needs to come for folks in addiction, and just like punishing them is not, we can't punish somebody out of addiction, right? We can't punish somebody out of trauma. And we can work with folks before they ever have to be behind bars or prevent them from going back.
Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to talk about attendance and all of the people that we have served this year.
Yeah. I have my handy dandy notebook, because the numbers change every day. Yeah, I can just roll off unless you have specific.
Yeah, we can dive in.
Bill, it looked like you were going to say something.
I mean, this hit me hard. Like it just, I don't know how it was that I hadn't seen this happening over the course of the year. And, but I remember, when you sent out that email to all of our facilitators, which we do on a monthly basis now, reporting what our attendance numbers were. And this one came in early November, and I looked at the numbers for October, and I thought, wait a minute. And I went back and I looked at the spreadsheet where you're tracking all of this. And then I did the math, and we had seen from January to October, 462% growth in our attendance. And it was, I mean, that's impressive. And as I was thinking about this last night, I was thinking about the people who are listening to this, and the people, because we had looked at the folks that had RSVP'd. That's you all. That's your work. I know Nicole's probably our number one contributor in terms of just sheer numbers. I know that. That's something she probably wouldn't tell you, but it's incredible what you all are doing. And so, sorry, Nicole, please take it.
No, I appreciate you starting like that. And yeah, I want to start this off with, this is so exciting. And I can't wait after this to tell you everything we're going to do next year to have even better data. So I just want to start in that way, because it's been really amazing to have the contribution of our facilitators sharing the number of people that they're serving weekly. And we can't wait to measure so much more and be able to support folks in so many ways. But yeah, as of today, and this is a kind of a nice surprise for our facilitators on the call, because I only told them that we've reached over 10,000. I haven't told them, but we've had 13,177 attendances this year globally. Yeah. And so that can include repeat folks, but it also includes a lot of new folks, because each month we've added so many new programs. In some of these, it's folks that have been doing the program, but we've invited them into the Prison Yoga Project umbrella. And some of these are completely new programs that have just been started this year. And so on average, we're serving about 200 people a week. And that number, that's often many new people in that 200 number, if that makes sense. And that's because of the nature of jail and the way that it folks circulate. That number also would be much higher if we didn't have so many pauses for COVID. So it's likely we're serving on average many more people than 200 a week, but that comes from including major pauses in programming when we have to stop. We estimate that we've served about 1,500 incarcerated folks this year in a year that has been incredibly tumultuous and with low staff, where we're often told only able to provide yoga in very small spaces. And so a lot of these programs used to be much bigger groups of folks, and doesn't matter to us. We want to say whether it's 3 or 20, and so I just wanted to share that. And the other kind of really exciting number is that last year at this time, we had 33 active programs in 17 facilities. So we had decided at the start, when COVID hit, that we're going to restart our count. We felt like we wanted to really build relationships with each person that was bringing in programs. We wanted to have clear facilitator guidelines. And so that was our number, 33 programs in 17 facilities. As of the end of November, we have 126 programs in 70 facilities.
Wow.
Yeah. And so of that, 74 of those have come back online. In some way, they were already a Prison Yoga Project program and we've reestablished them. 47 are new this year. Yeah. And so that's globally. And so that's really we have amazing programs that have begun in Portugal, thanks to James and Josephine running a training there. And Inez, who helped start those programs. We've brought on Juan, who's on this call in Costa Rica, who had 200 attendances last month. It really, really amazing. So we couldn't do it without everybody continually uploading attendance. And I know if you're a yoga teacher, numbers might not be your thing, not making that assumption, but, are wanting to do a survey, but it means so much to see how many folks we've been able to reach.
Yeah. I reflect here in San Diego, we've been able to restart 2 out of 14 programs that we had originally had. And when I think about the potential, both we're still in this process of bringing on programs that were in existence prior to the pandemic. And then the fact that we added more than like of the 100 and what did you say, 126?
126.
And you said 74 were prior, which means 52 are brand new. So, and
if those numbers don't add up exactly, it's because we added 4 new programs this week. So that's where the 126 comes from. And the 47 and 74 were calculated last week. So just if anybody did fast math, that's why it sounds that way. Yeah.
Well, and that's just a part of the reality of what we've been dealing with, especially here in the second half of the year, is that when people ask us a question about our organization and we give them an answer, it's like it is this, is a moving target, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and it's really astounding to see the potential. And I think that this is something that, looking ahead in the next 3 years or so, what we're really that when we're looking at how much of the incarcerated population that we're reaching, and that's even accounting the expanded groups that we want to reach, the potential for growth within our organization is like effectively infinite for us, and we've got exciting plans to try and reach more and more and more and more. James,
there's another. Yeah, of course. The book, at least my initial book, was kind of what launched the Prison Yoga Project back in 2010. And it's oftentimes we don't take into consideration the fact that we've sent more than 35,000 copies of my book, and now close to, I think, 2,000 copies of Josephine in my book to women, incarcerated women. And these are people who write to us, so that every month we're sending out 200 to 300 copies of the books to somebody who writes to us. And oftentimes what happens is, either in the request letters that we get, the copy in the letters would be, I've been given permission to start a yoga group here at XYZ prison or jail, and we want to use your book or Freedom from the Inside, the women's book, as a guide to our program. And this is very, very common. So we're not even factoring in all of the programs that we're seeding through our books, and not to mention the individual practices, because we also often get letters back from people who have received the book, which always deeply touches my heart, saying, I received Freedom from the Inside, or I received Yoga Path for Healing and Recovery, and it's changed my life. And it's like we sent them a bar of gold.
Yeah.
People who are in solitary oftentimes write back and say, one of the few things that I have, you've given me a yoga practice that I can practice while I'm in solitary confinement. So this is way beyond the formal programs that we're bringing in. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that, because oftentimes that gets overlooked. The impact of the book program has been continues to be really powerful.
Which is one thing we hope to measure next year. I just want to throw out there.
These are all the things that, as we're shifting and growing and maturing as an organization, and maybe before we go there and we talk about more of the measurement and evaluation stuff that we're looking to bring in, James, I want to just say that, I feel that every time I go in, and when we're moving into a new space, the idea of yoga as a healing practice inside prisons is, I think, well known, they know about Prison Yoga Project before we show up on a yard, because I don't know that there are very many facilities inside the United States where there aren't copies of that book circulating. And when I say circulating, it gets handed from person to person to person. And this is how we get, or somebody will loan it to somebody. And that's when we're going to get the letter. Like, a lot of this demand for the book was driven just by word of mouth. And it's incredible. It is a sought after solution for the type of suffering and the type of healing and the type of transformation that folks that are incarcerated need and want. And we're working on, trying to quantify the demand. And we believe it's about somewhere around 11 or 12% of people who are incarcerated would like to be practicing yoga as part of a group. And this is because I think, what you've done, what PYP has done in circulating that book, has created a knowledge and an awareness of the potential for healing and transformation through that yoga practice, through the circulation of that book within the system. It's amazing. We don't show up cold. We show up to a warm reception because of that. Nicole or Blair?
Yeah, thank you, James, for tying in the book as well and the impact that has. And like Nicole was saying, that's one of the things that we hope to do in 2023 as part of our expansion, is just collecting data. And the reason why data is important, and Nicole, we've talked about this on previous webinars, but this shows our validity. So we know when we go into facilities how potent our programming is and the support is, but to be able to go into correctional facilities, to be able to get grants, to be able to get funding, showing numbers is important. And so creating all of the systems to be able to track the data. And so again, thank you to facilitators for logging attendance and doing all of that work, because it really does make a difference. So thank you. And that's why numbers are important. It continues to show the validity of our work. And I mean, there's so many amazing things that we can talk about that we've done in 2022, but maybe we can talk about what we want to do in 2023. And whoever feels encouraged, I'll just throw it out to any of you.
Do you want to go ahead, James? Yeah.
Well, two of the initiatives that seem to bring the most buzz and excitement are the youth initiative, and the youth book that both Nicole and Blair can talk about, because they've been the key stakeholders in bringing that forward. And then our goal to start bringing practices to correctional staff. So in addition to continuing our services for incarcerated people, which is definitely on the uptrend. These are things that, and maybe if you talk about the youth initiative, you can talk about the continuing desire from different different detention centers contacting us for our services. But I think those two, whoever wants to take those so that we can share a little bit about them, I think is very exciting.
I can say a little more about youth. Just kind of starting there. And yes, we have a pending graphic novel for youth that we will hopefully circulate in 2023. Turns out it's incredibly challenging to create and publish a graphic novel, and it's written. There's a script, and we are working on cultivating art for that right now. And so the intention behind that is, we know that comic books are the most widely read type of book in incarceration. Blair and I have both spent a lot of time with youth, James as well. And we hope to make yoga something that feels relatable to them, like something they can do, something they can see themselves in. And we tried really hard, I also think, not to be corny about it. And you should do yoga because it will change your life. But we created this, what we hope to be a really relatable story about kids that end up end up getting incarcerated or like an alternative to incarceration. So it's both, Blair, I would say, like it's a somewhat realistic story and what can happen to a teenager, but it's also the dream of how teenagers will be treated once they're brought into the system. And I say that gets supplemented with our new youth training, Change from Within, which we had our first cycle this past October, but we'll have 2 cycles next year of it as well. And the intention is both to train already existing youth facilitators, but also support folks that want to create these programs in youth facilities. So that's very, very exciting. We've spent the year building our capacity to serve the youth population. And so we're looking to increase the number of youth programs that we have next year and also support the current ones too. I feel like that's like majorly where we're at with youth. If I'm forgetting anything, feel free to add, but that feels like the big launch.
I am so enthusiastic about both of those things. I am incredibly proud of our trainings. I think that we offer something that is unique in a lot of the online training that's available. We have an approach to creating those that I think is really effective and allows people to spend a lot of time letting what they're learning sink in a way that helps support, a change in the way they're going about what they're doing. And when we created this youth training, as I saw it coming together and I saw the whole team working on it and Kate, as the lead author in that, it's brilliant to watch that come together, and the results, the feedback, the testimonials that we got on that really, support that once again, it was like such a miraculous thing. And I'm really excited about the graphic novel. When I read your synopsis at the point that we got to the synopsis, the final draft before we reached out to hire a script writer, the third act brought me to tears. And it's good. It's such a good story. So yeah, thanks so much to the both of you for all the hard work and that's gone into that.
And for Dr. Sheena Howard for writing the script. And we will be thanking an artist within the next few months when we choose them and when we cultivate that as well.
Yeah.
And shout out to Gabran too. I don't know if he's on this call or not, but I know that he supported in the youth training as well, who's a facilitator of ours and has been doing a lot of trainings with us recently too. I'll give Gabran a shout out to that. Yeah. And then, okay. So youth is a focus for us for 2023, which was a big motivation for me joining Prison Yoga Project as well, is really to serve youth. I had done some expressive arts work in Louisiana, working with incarcerated youth. And that was just so deeply impactful. And that was about a decade ago. So that was really just a seed for me. And motivation, to come and be with Prison Yoga Project. And speaking of our training, because that's also how I got involved. I got involved with our foundational training. So I just dropped links in the chat to our youth training, our 200-hour yoga teacher training. We have Jen, the creator, as part of our core team, is also on this call. We've got another round of yoga teacher training starting in January. Last day for early bird pricing is today. So if you know anyone that wants to train with Prison Yoga Project, this is a completely trauma-informed, accessible yoga teacher training. And you can read more about our mission and that work in the link. And our foundational training, I had Priscilla pull some numbers. So our foundational training has really become robust. And like Bill was saying, that it's something that you can approach on your own time, which I really love because we're really diving deep into the heart of this work. And I think that it's heartbreaking, really looking at the work that we do and the people that we serve. It does take resilience to show up to this work over and over again. And so the training, taking it at your own pace, really supports the heartbreak of this work. But I have a number that I think was really amazing. So all of our training used to be, James would travel around the world and train people over a weekend. And we saw that we wanted people to spend more time with this work. So we moved our training online, and we have trained 737 people since we moved our training online. And that's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think probably a lot of people on this call, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And it also,
Please.
part of our mission of like shifting culture means one thing we do is support facilitators, but you don't have to be a facilitator in prison or jail to shift culture. And so we also exist to inspire folks to demand better and to disrupt what currently exists in whatever capacity. So we have lawyers, psychologists, therapists, like you name it, coming to our training to radiate this type of change throughout every system that they work in. And I think that really ties back to our new mission as well of healing-centered approach, right, to addressing the pressing issues of our time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had mentioned our correctional staff initiative.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up on that because it's also something that we continue to feel a lot of energy around. We're not really clear yet on the exact approach that we're going to take, but I want to acknowledge one of our facilitators in Maryland, Sue Radcliffe. I think Nancy Kochuk is with us today, who's also in Maryland, but Sue Radcliffe started training correctional staff at the jail. It's a jail, I believe, a jail that she works as a mental health therapist. And then she was given the opportunity to bring a training for correctional staff at a prison in Pennsylvania. And so she connected us with one of the foremost researchers on correctional staff health. And what we found out was that correctional staff suffer almost as much, or maybe just as much, maybe better said, as incarcerated people. And that the average life expectancy of a correctional officer is 59 years old. Now, is that all because they were a correctional officer? Well, maybe not, but definitely the toxic stress and trauma, vicarious trauma that they experience as a result of their work contributes to their health issues, contributes to the denigration of their health issues that leads to that very low life expectancy of 59 years old. We've also connected with the head of wellness for the California Correctional Officers Association and had some very meaningful conversations with him about bringing services to correctional officers. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 20 years is that the previous generation of correctional officers have retired or maybe even lost their lives. And that the newer generation of correctional officers, first of all, are more familiar with yoga. Our conjecture is, well, either they know somebody or maybe their partner is doing yoga, or maybe they've experienced yoga at one time or another. So yoga isn't so foreign to them. And that all of us have been talking about how often a correctional staff person will say to us, well, I wish we had yoga. And I know that we have done some work with correctional staff. I know we've done some work in Alabama and we have done some work in Maryland through Sue and perhaps through some other places. I think maybe in Massachusetts, we were doing some work a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. So we're looking at the best way. And of course, it's like, how can we do all these things that we're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, with such a small staff of people, with the impact that we're having, how can we do all of the things that we're talking about? So this is, of course, one of the reasons why we need to raise more funds so that we can put more people in place to champion these initiatives. But we're thinking our preliminary thoughts are starting out by doing workshops for correctional officers and introducing them to healing practices, to yoga practices, to embodiment practices that can support them with their well-being. So that's the general information about that initiative.
Yeah. At some point in 2023, we'll have the specifics, right? Or at least a first iteration of what we're going to give a shot at. And this is just going back to this, this is something that, started to come about as we were so warmly received when we reached out to the American Jail Association. And so then we're like, okay, there's a need here. And as we worked towards trying to fill that need, we realized just how complicated it is. There's a lot of things that have to be considered in order to be able to reach that population. And it's not just the officers, it's all the staff that work in the prison, the therapists, the administrative people, the maintenance folks. They're all experiencing the same sort of things. I'll just say anecdotally two things. I have, thanks, actually Sonia, if you're still on, yes, she is, wasn't able to take back all the books to Australia that we had brought for her. And that box stayed in my car. And then as I was going back into Donovan State Prison, I'd come in and the correctional officer who's working the desk, as I'm going in and getting my ID and signing in, would say, "Oh, yoga." And they'd ask a question. And I just started the habit of handing out our books. I had a copy of the Freedom from the Inside book for women. The desk duty is often, if you're pregnant, you often get put on that desk duty. And so many books going out to women correctional officers, and then same thing with guys, asking questions. And there was a string of about 6 weeks where every single week it was a different officer, and every single week I was able to hand them one of our books. And I want to be able to hand them something that specifically addresses them. And the reality of the impact that this has, not just on the officers, but on their families as well. A friend of mine invited somebody to our weekly trivia night, and I was asking her where she was from, and she's from San Luis Obispo. And I said, I work for a nonprofit that has a yoga program at the prison up in SLO, California Men's Colony. And she goes, "Oh yeah, I know California Men's Colony. Both of my parents worked there." And I said, "Well, what do they do?" And she said, I forget what her mom does, but she said her dad was a correctional officer. And I just looked at her and I said, "How's your dad?" And she said, "He died of a heart attack." And, earlier than age 59, but I shouldn't be able to assume. And we talked a little bit about it, and she talked a little bit about how his energy impacted their family, and so here's this young woman, early 30s, who's lost her father young, and who grew up in a home that was impacted by that energy, that was stoked by his work. And so it just echoes out.
And I think too, it's worth saying, like, when we began our foundational training online, it was right after the murder of George Floyd. And that anger against the violence of the system is very real. And I think it was felt by a lot of folks in our foundational training. And I think, at one point someone had even asked, like, how do you even face folks? Like, when you walk into jail, like, how do you even look at correctional officers? How are you not so angry? And it's like, well, I'm not angry because they're people. And I it's hard. It's really easy to hate the system. What's the quote that we just sent out?
Be ruthless with systems and kind with people.
And it's so true. And I think that if we are to other human beings, people in the system, there's no potential for change, right? Like someone that doesn't like you does not want to listen to you, or someone that thinks you're pretentious or like knows the right way of doing things. So if we are here to disrupt and like reach across to folks that may never have seen themselves as someone that practices yoga, like that is how we affect change. And I think there's room for anger at systems. Like you could catch me protesting, like, like I'm there. But when it comes to the work that we do, it's not othering, right? It's bringing in community. And that, as James said in the very beginning, is what yoga is about, right? Non-duality. Yeah. And so it's really special. Yeah.
And I think as we model that, I've seen the system change. I've seen individual people that I've worked alongside, deputies, change their attitude about their job and about their role in society because of the way our facilitators have modeled the interaction, and they see the difference in how the folks that are in their custody interact with others when it's done in a healing context. And they don't want the aggression and the conflict. And if they can find another way, they're going to move in that direction. I believe that the system, if shown a better alternative, is going to naturally lead in that way, or start to lean in that way. And by not othering, we don't create a conflict that creates a barrier towards that systemic shift. Yeah, we're coming close. We haven't taken any questions.
Yeah, what are you saying?
I know.
We hear from our community.
Well, I noticed Blair dropped in the chat, like, what are our priorities? And I did just want to add, and I read it back to saying, like, how, so we are working with an organization in the UK called Upshot. And in the beginning of the year, we're going to begin to capture everything that we're discussing in a much more organized way. And so there's going to be really wonderful opportunities for our facilitators to capture many of the outcomes that folks are experiencing, whether they're facilitating for correctional officers or really whoever they're facilitating for. And I just want to name that because that's going to be a big shift in being able to share all the stories that we're sharing right now. So when we talk about priorities, it's continuing to build programs, but doing so in a very scalable way so that when something is successful in California, like it will be with our correctional program, we can then replicate it in other states. As someone that lives in the South, I think it can be challenging sometimes when you hear, well, California. And I know working in Prison Yoga Project, California is not as easy as some might think on the outside to build programming. We're a couple steps behind here in Arkansas. And so to talk about everything we're discussing, we're going to be able to replicate in scale with the systems that we are building.
Yeah. This system that she's talking about, Upshot, we're going to be able to talk to you a lot more and more specifically about broader and broader outcomes, and not just the service that we're rendering inside prisons, but then everything that's happening with the book program, as James was noting, everything that's happening through our training programs. Like, we're creating a lot of impact in the world, and there's, like I said, there's so much potential for more and more and more of that. We want to shift the decimal point to try and create an order of magnitude growth, but it's still, we're going to be chipping away at the overall demand, which is. And
Sonia just asked if it's scalable internationally. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how we'll start. Like, I don't know. I will plan out the onboarding for all of this, but yes, it is very scalable internationally.
So there's one more program that I wanted to share with everybody if they don't know about it. And it's a program that we have received grant support from the California Department of Corrections. And that grant support, by the way, came through the California State Legislature, was given to the Department of Correction. And so we submitted a proposal for the grant, and then they identify the populations that they want to focus on for grants. We've received grants for 3 different California state prisons to bring our program to transgender and gender nonconforming incarcerated people.
Yeah.
And this is a brand new world for us. And Bill and Nicole and Blair and I have all we recently went through a 15-hour training with the Trans Yoga Project, which essentially is just scratching the surface, but at least it was an entry into working with this population, this community of people. And quite frankly, it's very exciting. It's very expansive in terms of, that's the way that I look at it, in terms of having this opportunity and also recognizing it's not just transgender and gender nonconforming people, but it's the entire LGBTQ community that's incarcerated in the United States, which is very large.
Mm-hmm.
So what started out with the Department of Corrections, California Department of Corrections, as a program specifically for transgender and gender nonconforming, we have gotten approval to broaden it to LGBTQ incarcerated people. And we are in the process of launching that. We've actually launched the first program in California at a prison called Mule Creek State Prison. And Joanna, I don't think she's on the call, Joanna Coate is our facilitator there. Very exciting. It's a high security prison. So we're bringing the program to a high security yard as well as a medium security yard. And we're also launching the program at San Quentin in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're kind of at ground zero when it comes to bringing this practice. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because out of that, I believe that we are going to be able to develop an approach, a specific approach for adapting our trauma-informed, mindfulness-based approach that's a general approach to incarcerated people to this community. And I think, and I know we're going to learn a lot about this because we've got a lot to learn about it. I find that to be really exciting. And so it's just going to be another tool that we're going to have to share with all of you in terms of being able to reach out to communities where you serve. We're probably at least a year away from having something to share as far as an approach in that regard. But I just wanted to bring that up because it's new, it's exciting, and we're all in.
Yeah. And I appreciate the way you phrase it, James, of like, we have a lot to learn because our methodology is shaped by the people that we serve. And while we're increasing our formal ways of collecting feedback and data, we've always collected it informally a lot, and just through the relationships that we build with our community. And now even too, that we have folks that have been released and are out on the outside, they're going to impact us in other ways, such as through like our board and advisory councils. And so we learn from the folks that we practice with every single day.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say about that is that we have every intention to attract LGBTQ people to come on board with Prison Yoga Project to become trauma-informed, trained facilitators for those programs.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about our YTT and, our intention in starting that 2.5 years or a year and a half ago, or however long ago it was. Now we're moving into our 4th cohort of that, and just seeing, just how the diversity of the people that are coming to us through that program. It's really wonderful. And I think over the next 5 years or so, we're really going to start to see the diversity of the folks that are facilitating with us increasing more and more and more, because, and it's funny. It's like we're coming down to an hour and a half. And I feel like in terms of what we're doing, we're scratching the surface in what we're able to share in that time. We're generous with the scholarships that we offer for these trainings because we don't want financial barriers to stand in the way of people participating and becoming facilitators, acquiring the skills and the confidence, the leadership that allows them to go into these spaces and to go out into the world and offer yoga in this way that is unique. That is informed by our understanding of the pressure of those punitive systems and the need to create space for people to experience their own inner authority, their own sense of intrinsic motivation, and to really discover themselves without somebody putting an agenda on them. And it's so it's incredible to see what's happening through all the training programs there in terms of that. And that diversity in all ways is something that I think is really going to be one of the remarkable stories that unfolds over the next 5 years. And we wind up giving away a lot of revenue and a lot of scholarship money in there, probably more than James and Nicole really want to know. But this is once again one of the reasons why we need that financial support, because a lot goes into this. A lot. We feel like we probably need more staff than what we've got right. We know that we need more staff than what we've got right now to handle and really effectively do and meet the need for what it is we're trying to create in the world. So
I know that the next few weeks you'll be receiving at least an email a week, really talking about more of these goals and more of our wins. James talked about our core team doing the Trans Yoga Project training. I think we also had 15, 17, 20 people from our community.
20,
wow.
It was 20, I think 23 people that we either paid for or signed up through us. About 2/3 of the folks that we brought to that training.
I know Lucas, who's on this meeting with us. He was on it, and maybe some other people that I'm not recognizing.
Yeah.
And that's just one training that we did as a team, right? I know at least a quarter that we are continually investing in ourselves to invest in this work. And that's one of the things that we'll be talking about in this email campaign as well. So maybe you saw on Tuesday, we sent out our first fundraising campaign for the season. And so we've created a document of how to support PYP. There's about 7 bullet points. I'm going to drop this into the chat right here. And so happy holidays. So this is just, these are a few ways that you can support PYP. And I can go through the list. Does that sound good? And then we can kind of open it up for questions. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Get that. Yeah.
Okay, great. So donating is really the most impactful way that you can support Prison Yoga Project. And I know a lot of people here work for Prison Yoga Project. So maybe if it's not you directly donating, in this document, we show how to do a Facebook fundraiser. So this is actually our first holiday season where we're able to do a Facebook fundraiser. Facebook, although Meta is controversial in all of these different ways, they do not take any percent of donations, which is really incredible for us. So all of the money that you fundraise goes directly towards Prison Yoga Project. So there's a step-by-step process of how you can donate and ask your community to support us as well. We've talked about our training. So taking our training.
Real quick, before we move away from Facebook, this is also, one, it's extremely effective. When you set a goal and you reach out to your community, what we have seen when people create birthday fundraisers and things like that, you'd be surprised at the amount of money that you're able to raise for your cause. It is very effective, and it does more than just raise funds. It drives awareness of the work that we're doing in the world, and your care and attention towards that matters to the people who care and love about you. And I know at least a part of your Facebook friends are part of your close circle, and they will support what you support because they care and love about you, and it grows that awareness. So yeah, thanks, Blair.
Yeah, of course. And then we go into it. That's also the third point too. So, one way to support Prison Yoga Project is by taking our training. And again, if this is something that you've done, if this is how you found Prison Yoga Project, again, sharing the awareness of our training, sharing that link, sharing photos of our work, and even bringing it up in conversation. Maybe you are a yoga facilitator. Maybe you have a yoga studio that you go to often. Ask the yoga studio owner to run a Facebook campaign during this holiday season, right? Just thinking of ways that you can support the people that we serve. So those are just a couple ideas. Starting a Facebook fundraiser is number 3. Directly emailing your community and loved ones. We have a couple sentences and linked for you to get started on how to, so you're not just opening up this blank email and like, how do I start? We've got a couple sentences for you and how to start. Again, sharing on social media. We see that the photos of our work are really impactful. And that's also something that we want to do next year as well. We haven't been able to go into facilities often and to take more photos because of the pandemic. So taking more photos of our work, because one viral photo can really be can really shift the work that we do. Let's see, what else do we have on here? Connect us with a donor. I jokingly said, if you have a philanthropic aunt, that wants to support social justice, or, you've got an aunt that does yoga, send her our way. We would love to have a conversation with her and talk to her about how she can join our team and support the work that we do. And then just continuing to engage with us. And then I'll give it to the team as well. Anything else they want to say?
I think, I've always had this feeling from the very beginning that if I just stayed true to the practice and was dedicated to service and to the people I was serving, the money would come. And here it is 20 years later. I often say, I walked into San Quentin with a yoga mat under my arm. I had no idea what I was getting myself involved in. And here 20 years later, I'm with you, all of you, who are dedicated to this work. And we will be supported. So part of it is attitude. Part of it is opening up to the abundance that is out there. And it's not, and again, it's not just for Prison Yoga Project. Yes, we appreciate any effort that's put forward for Prison Yoga Project, but it's kind of an attitude that I feel is a really healthy attitude as a yogi in life, to be dedicated to your work, be dedicated to kindness, be dedicated to humanity, and you'll be taken care of. Yeah. You'll be taken care of. So that's kind of how I feel about the Prison Yoga Project. And the more we join together in that feeling and that energy, the more abundance we will experience.
Yeah.
I've witnessed that at getting this, see us start new programs and new facilitators come on board. It's quite magical, actually, the way someone will say, I want to start a program here. And then we hear from a facility in that area, or 2 people living in the same community who don't know each other at the same time want to start a program, and we can connect them. I truly believe what you're saying, James, about the abundance is out there. We just have to open ourselves up to it and know that what we're doing is supported by the universe. It feels very that is the most yogi thing I probably could say, but it really is true when you're invested and grounded in this work every day. It's going to keep happening and it's going to keep growing. And everybody on this call is a part of a movement. And we're just like excited because I have to say, like, this is the coolest movement to be a part of. Everybody's so nice. like everybody is fun. It's just this is a community of good people seeking to have good change in the world. And so try to have a little fun with it too, because it's hard. It's a harsh environment and it's a hard thing to encounter every day, but there's a lot of good in it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I have worked with a lot of teams in my careers in the corporate world, and I have loved them, but there's something really special about this crew. Our, core team members and then the extended community. And one of the reasons why I love, facilitating the foundational training workshops is getting to meet all those new people and then seeing, names showing up in the list of participants there, and the connection that has just grown tighter and tighter. And I think it's because we approach this work with a high degree of alignment around a set of values which are deep, deeply. We're aligned with the Dharma. We're aligned with the truth, and we run as an organization and as a community, aligned with these universal truths around kindness and compassion and supporting one another. And there's no way that can fail. There is no way that can fail. It's really beautiful. It's really beautiful to see this evolution, the 10 years that I've been involved with Prison Yoga Project, and how much it's changed my life, and how many lives I've seen it change along the way. And to get to know all of you in the way that I have is just the most incredible. I got a really great gift in this life. Yeah.
And it really is such an honor to be able to walk a yogic path, right? That we see that everyone on this call, that our practice extends beyond the mat. Really to live your yoga. It's not the application of sitting and practicing. James and I, we always talk about, sitting is totally the most important, right? But it's like, how do you apply that sitting? How do you apply the contemplation? How do you apply the interconnectedness of all beings to everywhere you go in the world? And so I just am so grateful to be really part of a community of leaders in the way that we do have a significant impact. And so I just am so excited to be here, and us all coming together of how we can continue to make even more of an impact, right? Like, how can we serve hundreds of thousands of individuals impacted by trauma and incarceration? And I think all of us coming here together can do that. Yeah. I see we're at time. I see thank yous coming in. Thank you. Happy holidays. Thank you for being here. Do we want to answer a couple questions? Do we want to invite that? Do we want to drop emails for people to ask questions? How are we feeling as a crew here right now?
If I'm going to have to bow out, I have an appointment, and then I have another meeting with Bill in an hour. So, but
that's
I
right.
They're doing tree work around my house, and I just got a note that I got to move my car. So, thank you, everybody. Blessings,
James, and I'll see you in a little bit.
And congratulations on 20 years.
Yeah, have a beautiful holiday, everybody.
Bye, James.
Bye.
I can hang out a couple of minutes. I feel like if there
are burning questions, let's go ahead and take them.
Yeah.
I'll start with one from Carol. Creating space, as you are each emphasizing, is crucial in our work, yet programming space and correctional staff are scant. If you are personally overwhelmed, what is something you do or say or reflect on to create more space?
Yeah. I think the abundance that we were just talking about is what comes to me. As we're running the numbers, and trying to really think strategically about, we're reaching small percentage of the number of people who might be interested in participating with us. And it feels overwhelming to think of how far we have to go. But when I think about all the support that we have through our community, this really feels like it helps me feel more spacious about it. It's weird. I don't feel pessimistic. Boy, I might get called out on this. I don't feel pessimistic.
Today.
Is that true? At the end of the day, I always come away feeling optimistic in spite of those things that make me, that when it seems like we're just pushing that boulder up a hill. There are so many forces in the world that are resisting this sort of transition. But I really do believe that, that we're just stay aligned with the truth.
I think it too starts with you could be in the biggest physical space with you can be in the biggest physical space, but if you don't have mental space or clarity, it doesn't matter. So I do think it starts with the self-work of building ways in which you can personally feel spacious and not overwhelmed and burdened. And I know I feel like self-care is a social media TikTok trend. And so when I say that word, it kind of makes me uncomfy, but I've leaned so much into taking care of myself so that I can take care of other people. And sometimes that means not showing up to yoga class for a week, not teaching a yoga class or not building my schedule to be too full. Because if I'm cluttered, then I cannot create the space for others to feel spacious, right? And so I think a lot about the self-work, because even in those situations, I feel you, Carol, where we're understaffed and there's not even a lot of physical room for folks to take up. I teach a class of 80 people pushed in together in the barracks. We can create space in the way we react to people. We can create space in the freedom we give people to choose how they move their body. We just have to get creative. Sometimes we can create space in the 10 extra minutes you give your co-facilitator to talk and reflect about what happened in class that day. Yeah.
I think, you mentioned something in there that is core to the way that we hope to facilitate our sessions, and that is doing this work without an attachment to an outcome. I mean, it's weird because we work in this nonprofit world where outcomes, and measuring and trying to quantify and all of this stuff is something that we have to do. But then as we do this work, if we can go into it with, without an attachment to needing things to be in a particular way and show up in a way that creates that opportunity for people to have a chance to explore through their bodies, that intrinsic expression of self, which is what we're hoping to create, that kind of holding space for that exploration and that discovery, then magic things happen with those people without us doing a thing that makes that happen. And then that to me is like a kind of spaciousness, that lack of agenda in what we're doing and in needing a particular thing to happen, really kind of allows that to us to move into a very confined and claustrophobic and oppressive feeling part of our society in a way that doesn't feel so overwhelming. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And then when in doubt, when you leave the jail, get a car wash. It's like my favorite thing.
Yeah. Or a carne asada burrito.
Or like a latte, and that, I feel like that's all very like materialistic, but like creating space to like just be and process and not force is so critical for, I think, facilitators, but anybody that touches social justice work. It's not quantity, it's quality.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you for your leadership. We didn't get to talk about everything that we've done this year. You guys were in a 6-month leadership training for our organization.
Oh, yeah. We're skipping over a lot of really big, important stuff.
Which people will hear in the emails, but I think that's amazing. An hour and a half, we didn't get to talk about all of the things that we did this year. So thank you for leading us. Thank you for the sacrifices that you make. And it's not like sacrifices in martyrdom. It's sacrifices that you feel in your heart in all of the ways that you want to show up, and even in the days that you don't want to show up. Thank you for doing it anyway.
There is, gosh, I'm sure so many people who are on this call still must know this already, that there is nothing more fulfilling than feeling like, you're giving your life for a purpose that's larger than your own self-interests. It's, the secret. It's the secret to true happiness, I think, a real deep happiness, or not even happiness, but satisfaction in life, because it's not always happy, but it is deeply satisfying. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone on this call. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the work of Prison Yoga Project. I just dropped the link again one more time of all of the different ways and shapes you can support Prison Yoga Project. So thank you for being here.